Let's start with a simple question. What would you do if your life was turned upside down by an inexplicable force? A force that drags you, kicking and screaming into a moral abyss where no answer is the right one. That's the heart of Yorgos Lanthimos' 2017 film, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This psychological thriller isn't just a movie. It's a slow burn descent into a nightmare where the lines between justice, revenge, and sheer madness blur into oblivion. But what makes this film truly haunting isn't just its plot, it's the characters. Each one is a piece of the puzzle, yet none of them can offer a way out of the labyrinth they're trapped in. So let's peel back the layers and let's dive into these characters and explore the twisted psychology that drives them piece by piece. Trust me, this is going to get eerie fast. But before we do, make sure you like and subscribe for more content just like this. We begin with Dr. Stephen Murphy, the heart surgeon whose steady hands and cool demeanor conceal a deeply flawed human being. Stephen is the quintessential figure of control. In the operating room, he holds life and death in his hands, quite literally playing God. But here's the kicker. That same control that makes him a respected surgeon becomes his downfall outside the hospital. On the surface, Stephen is the embodiment of success. He's got the perfect job, the perfect house, perfect family, or so it seems. But dig a little deeper and you'll see the cracks in the facade. Stephen's interactions with his wife Anna, his children Kim and Bob, and especially with Martin, the young man who becomes the film's catalyst, reveal a man who's distant, emotionally detached. There's something off about him. It's almost as if he's performing a role rather than living his life. When Martin enters the picture, those cracks become gaping holes. Stephen's decision-making is put to the test, and we see a man who's desperate to maintain control, but is increasingly powerless. As the film progresses, Stephen's godlike image crumbles. He's not the savior he thought he was. Instead, he's just another flawed human, trapped in a situation where his usual methods of control, logic, reason, and authority are useless. What's more fascinating is how Stephen's downfall is almost a form of poetic justice. He's made a fatal mistake in the past, a mistake that cost a life. And now the universe through Martin demands a sacrifice. But it's not just any sacrifice. It's one that forces Stephen to confront his own moral compass, or lack thereof. The man who's used to cutting into people's chests to fix their hearts is now the one whose heart is being torn apart, piece by piece. Anna Murphy, played by the ever-captivating Nicole Kidman, is a character who demands attention. On the surface, she's the epitome of the perfect wife, a beautiful, composed, and supportive partner to Stephen. Beneath her icy exterior lies a complex woman whose sense of security is tied to Stephen's success. She's built her life around him, and as long as he's in control, so is she. However, as Martin's influence begins to unravel the family's life, Anna's carefully constructed world starts to crumble. What's fascinating about Anna is how she responds to the crisis. Unlike Stephen, who initially tries to rationalize the situation, Anna is more pragmatic, almost ruthlessly so. She doesn't waste time questioning why this is happening. Instead, she wants to know what they can do to fix it. But here's where it gets intriguing. Anna's pragmatism is not born out of strength, it's a survival mechanism. As Stephen becomes more helpless, Anna's veneer of control starts to melt away, revealing a woman who's terrified of losing everything she's worked for. She's not just afraid of losing her children or her husband, she's afraid of losing her identity, which is so closely tied to the life they've built together. One of the most chilling moments in the film is when Anna confronts Stephen about his past mistake. There's no empathy in her voice, no warmth, just a cold, calculated desire to understand what they're up against. This moment is crucial because it shows that Anna, despite her outward appearance, is just as broken as Stephen. She's not the rock that holds the family together. She's another piece of the puzzle that's about to fall apart. In the end, Anna's journey is one of a woman who's forced to confront the reality that her life is built on a foundation of lies and mistakes. Her struggle is not just against the supernatural forces at play, but against the realization that she's been living in a bubble that's about to burst. And when it does, there's no telling what will be left of her. And now we arrive at Martin, the character who turns the Murphy family's world upside down. If Stephen is the surgeon playing God, Martin is the angel of death, though not the kind you'd expect. Played by Barry Keoghan in a performance that's equal parts unsettling and mesmerizing, Martin is a teenager with a peculiar charm, but there's something off about him from the very beginning. Martin is not your typical antagonist. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't make threats, and doesn't even seem particularly menacing at first glance, but there's an eerie calmness about him, a sense of inevitability in his actions that make him one of the most chilling characters in recent cinema. What's terrifying about Martin is not that he's driven by malice or revenge in the traditional sense. He's driven by a twisted sense of justice. one that's rooted in the ancient concept of blood for blood. When Martin reveals that Stephen must kill one of his family members to atone for the death of Martin's father, a patient who died on Stephen's operating table, it's clear that Martin believes he's not asking for anything unreasonable. In his mind, this is the natural order of things. A life was taken, and now a life must be given in return. The chilling part is how calmly and matter-of-factly he presents the ultimatum, as if it's the most logical thing in the world. Martin is a character who defies easy categorization. Is he a victim, a villain, or something else entirely? The film never fully answers this question, which is what makes him so compelling. He's a force of nature, an embodiment of the idea that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are far beyond our control or understanding. Now, what's particularly fascinating about Martin is his relationship with Stephen. There's a strange bond between them, almost like a father and a son, but twisted beyond recognition. Martin seeks out Stephen's approval and attention, almost as if he's testing him to see if he's worthy of his own twisted form of justice. In a way, Martin is not just seeking revenge, he's seeking validation, a confirmation that the world operates according to the rules he believes in. As the film progresses, it becomes clear that Martin is not going to relent. He's not going to change his mind or offer an easy way out. He's a character who embodies the inevitability of fate, and that's what makes him so terrifying. He's the embodiment of the moral and psychological dilemmas at the heart of the film. And as the Murphy family spirals into chaos, it's Martin who remains the calm at the center of the storm, watching as everything falls apart. Kim and Bob, Stephen and Anna's children, are the innocent victims in this twisted tale. But in the killing of a sacred deer, innocence doesn't guarantee safety. It only makes their fate more tragic. Kim, the elder of the two, initially appears to be a typical teenager. She's at that age where rebellion and curiosity collide, and her relationship with Martin starts off as something innocent, even flirtatious. But as the story unfolds, we see that Kim is not just a bystander. She's dragged into the same psychological nightmare as her parents, and her innocence becomes a weapon used against her. When the supernatural curse takes hold, paralyzing her legs, Kim's initial flirtation with Martin turns into something far more sinister. She tries to reason with him, to find some way to escape the fate that's been laid out for her, but it's no use. Martin's grip on her and her family is too strong. Bob, on the other hand, is younger and more vulnerable. He's the child who's still under his parents' protection, yet that protection proves to be worthless in the face of the curse. Bob's illness manifests differently, with the quiet, almost eerie acceptance of what's happening to him. He doesn't understand why his body's betraying him, but he doesn't fight it either. There's a heartbreaking innocence in the way Bob tries to carry on with his life, even as he's slowly wasting away. What makes Kim and Bob's plight so devastating is their helplessness. They're caught in a battle they don't understand, one that they have no control over. And while their parents are desperate to find a way out, Kim and Bob are the ones who ultimately paid the price. They're not just the victims. They're the sacrificial lambs in a twisted game of morality and retribution. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. The film forces us to confront the idea that their innocence might actually be a part of why they're targeted. In a world where justice is measured in blood, innocence doesn't protect you. It just makes your suffering all the more poignant. Kim and Bob's story is a tragic reminder that in the killing of a sacred deer, no one is safe and everyone is expendable. At its core, the killing of a sacred deer is a modern retelling of the Greek myth of Iphigenia, a tale of sacrifice, fate, and the cruelty of the gods. In the myth, Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia to appease the goddess Artemis who cursed the Greek army. It's a story of a father forced to choose between his duty and his love for his child, a choice that no parent should ever have to make. In the film, Stephen finds himself in a similar situation. He's asked to choose which of his family members must die to atone for his past mistake. It's a choice that's as impossible as it is horrifying, and it's one that echoes the ancient myth in a modern context. But here's where the film takes it a step further. Unlike Agamemnon, who's commanded by the gods, Stephen is faced with a choice that's presented by a mere mortal, Martin. The film blurs the line between divine punishment and human vengeance, leaving us to wonder if there's really any difference at all. What makes this theme of sacrifice so powerful is how it forces us to confront our own moral beliefs. In the world of the film, there's no right answer, no easy way out. Stephen's dilemma is one that taps into our deepest fears. The fear of losing those we love, the fear of being powerless to stop it, and the fear that we might be responsible for their suffering. It's a psychological horror that lingers long after the credits roll, leaving us questioning not just the character's choices, but our own sense of morality. The film's title itself is a reference to this theme. The sacred deer is a symbol of purity, of innocence, and of the ultimate sacrifice. But in Lanthimoso's world, the sacred deer is not just a symbol. It's a reminder that in the end, someone has to pay the price, and sometimes that price is more than we can bear. In the killing of a sacred deer, Yorgos Lanthimos crafts a tale that's as disgusting as it is thought-provoking. It's a film that doesn't just ask questions, it forces us to confront them, to wrestle with them, and to accept that there are no easy answers. The characters, each trapped in their own psychological hell, are a reflection of our own fears and desires, magnified and twisted until they become unrecognizable. Stephen, Anna, Martin, Kim, and Bob, they're all players in a game that none of them can win. But in the end, it's not about winning or losing. It's about the choices we make, the sacrifices we're forced to accept, and the realization that sometimes the worst monsters are the ones we create ourselves. So as the credits roll and the screen fades to black, we're left with a haunting question. What would you do if you were in their shoes? Because in the killing of a sacred deer, the abyss doesn't just gaze back, it swallows you whole. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Cinema Psyche, where we unravel the mind one scene at a time.